This is the Valen Rev 2 from Retrospec, and it's the more affordable tier of their moto or moped-style e-bike. So with a price tag of around $1,300, does it deliver the power and comfort that we expect from this style of bike? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report, and thanks for stopping by. My name is John. If you're new here, we do our best to make the most in-depth e-bike reviews out there, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of our future content. But let's dive into the Valen Rev 2 a little deeper. The price I mentioned is something worth revisiting, as it's pretty uncommon in our experience to find moto-style e-bikes this affordable. This bike keeps things pretty basic to be able to hit that $1,300 limit, but overall it's a solid bike from a brand that we're quickly getting pretty attached to. When we're looking at a bike of this style, we definitely have some expectations for how it should feel and perform, and we were happy to note that the Rev 2 has it where it counts. If you're looking for a Class 3 e-bike that can go up to 28 miles per hour, you'll need to go for the higher end Valen Rev Plus. We'll drop a link to our review of that down in the video description. But as a Class 2 e-bike, the Rev 2 still had a punchy feel with quick acceleration, and it did a great job on hills thanks to its 750 watt rear hub motor. So you might consider this bike over the Rev Plus because of its costs, but another reason might be that this version is super simple to operate. It has a single speed drivetrain with a 38 tooth chainring and a 16 tooth cog on the freewheel, so there's no need to worry about shifting if you choose to pedal the bike. And of course it has a throttle to keep you moving otherwise. There's also no display on this version of the Valen, but the basic LED indicator panel uses a series of lights to show battery charge and pedal assist level without overcomplicating things. Running through the bike's spec sheet, there's an externally mounted 48 volt, 500 watt hour battery on the down tube. There's a Tektro Aries mechanical disc brake system with 180mm rotors, and then the 20-inch wheels have 4-inch fat tires from CST. As with most moped-style e-bikes, the saddle on this model is non-adjustable, but it's long enough that I could scoot back for comfortable pedaling, and if you're not pedaling, I think you might be able to squeeze a passenger on the back. Just be sure to stick with the 350-pound weight limit. The cockpit is extremely simple with BMX-style riser bars and rubber grips. The LED indicator panel I mentioned is on the left. There's a bell and a throttle lever on the right. And then to wrap things up, the bike weighs about 65 pounds, including the battery. It's UL 2849 compliant, and it's available in 3 color options. This is called Matte Riptide Blue, but there's also Slate and Matte Graphite, which are both lighter and darker shades of gray. That covers everything, so be sure to stick around while we go over the bike's results in our real-world testing. We tested its speeds, its stopping power, its hill climbing ability, and its range, so let's go see how it stacked up. Our brake test is pretty straightforward. We brought the Valen up to its max speed of 20 miles per hour, applied the brakes, and measured the distance it traveled before stopping. Lots of variables come into play when braking, so we always do this test 3 times and then average the results. So this bike stopped in an average of 18 feet 9 inches. We were really impressed by that result. It was above average compared to other moped-style e-bikes we've tested. That's even more impressive when considering that this bike uses a mechanical brake system, and we typically expect this kind of performance from hydraulic brakes. The Valen has 2 big things going for it though. First, it's a lot lighter and easier to slow down than most of the other moped-style bikes we've tested. Where this one weighs 65 pounds, the others have been up in the 80 to 90 pound range, and sometimes even above that, so the brakes had to work a lot harder. And second, as far as mechanical brake systems go, these Tektro Aries brakes have consistently performed very well for us, usually at least on par with your average 2-piston hydraulic brake system. So bottom line, Retrospec chose a safe and effective brake set that did a great job. The Valen Rev 2 uses a cadence sensor to engage its 750 watt motor, and it has pre-programmed speed limits in each of its 5 pedal assist settings. There's a good chance you won't be pedaling this bike, but we wanted to see what those speed limits were when you do, so let's take it out to the bike paths and find out. And while we're out there, we can also check out how quickly the throttle will bring the bike up to its top speed. All right, we are here on the Retrospec Valen Rev 2 to do a speed test. Starting things off with no pedal assist, kind of around 8 miles per hour, maybe a little above. And that's just my own leg power with a single speed drivetrain here. So let's go up to PAS1. All right, you can hear that motor engage. And that made a huge difference in, how easy it was to pedal. Topping off pretty quickly here though, around 8.5, 9 miles per hour. Yep, all right, let's go up to PAS2. All right, a little bit of a kick there. And I'm starting to ghost pedal. That's no surprise with the single speed, and I really don't mind that here. This style of bike. So around 12, maybe 12 and a half in PAS2. Let's go ahead and go up to PAS3. All right. And just to clarify, I am using an app on my phone since there's no readout on this bike, just the LED indicator panel. So we're going around 15 and a half in this setting. Let's go up to PAS4. Another little kick. And getting some real speed here, up to around 18, maybe 18 and a half. All right, and then we'll finish things off in PAS5. Getting up towards 20. Let's see if we can do it. Yeah, there we go. All right. 20.2 looks like about the max. We'll call that our speed test, and let's go see how the throttle does. All right, let's do a throttle acceleration test here on the Valen Rev 2 from 0 to 20. We'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. All right. Slow to start, but building pretty quick. And 20. All right, so let's run through the numbers for the bike's maximum speeds. With no pedal assist, I was going comfortably at about 8.2 miles per hour, and that went up to 9.1 miles per hour in PAS1. Going up from there, I hit 12.4 miles per hour in PAS2, 15.5 in PAS3, 18.5 in PAS4, and 20.2 miles per hour in PAS5. That data shows generally well-balanced programming with even increases in speed and power between settings. The jump from PAS4 to 5 wasn't quite as large as the differences between the other settings, but it was still enough to make both of them feel distinct. So basically, if you choose to pedal this bike, you have a good variety of options to choose from to set your maximum speed. The throttle felt strong and steady without being overpowered, and it could get the bike up to speed pretty quickly. I did find it to be a little touchy in my testing outside of this formal test, so it wasn't that easy to modulate my speed. I'd suggest that Retrospec tie the throttle into the pedal assist system, so it would be limited to the same 5 speed limits, but overall the bike functioned and performed very well in this test. We changed up our range test process with the Valen Rev 2, so bear with me while I walk through some technical details. Usually we pedal every bike in its highest and lowest pedal assist settings until the battery's empty, but on this one we only tested it with the throttle since we think most riders will use that method to get around. For the record, we'll be sticking to throttle-only tests on all future moto-style e-bikes, but in the Valen Rev 2's case, we covered 23.5 miles over the course of an hour and 19 minutes. We don't have other throttle-only results to compare to yet, since this is a pretty new change to our process, but there are 2 things I want to consider. First, our contact at Retrospec said that the estimated throttle range is 20 miles, so we were able to meet and exceed that mark. But second, we can get an idea of the motor's efficiency by looking at the advertised pedal range and how that relates to our data for other bikes. Retrospec advertises up to 49 miles when pedaling in PAS1, and we'd expect PAS5 to give us about 2/3 of that, so 32-ish miles. Our throttle results were about half the maximum pedal distance, which I think makes sense since we were running purely on motor power. The 23 miles or so from this version of the bike should be enough to get you across town and back. We think the Rev 2 did a solid job here, and we'll try to update our written review once we have some more throttle-only data for comparison. I'm going to pass you over to our test rider Justin for a few minutes to talk about our hill test. Justin took the Valen Rev 2 to our extreme test spot called Hellhole Trail to see how the bike could handle a 12% grade with its throttle and with its pedal assist system. And then after the test, I'll see you back here in the studio to go over the results.
Okay, out on Hellhole with the Retrospec Valen and doing the throttle test. We're gonna see how it goes. I'm on max PAS, although it doesn't really matter too much. It's all the same output. I don't have a speed output, so I just kind of tell you what it feels like. So far, it feels fairly decent. Slowing down a little bit here to that first climb, but if it makes it here, it's gonna make it. I'd be shocked if it doesn't make through the rest. Motor noise, you can hear it. I'd say it's average, maybe a little above average on the noise as it's climbing. As I go faster, you hear that whir, you know, a little bit louder. I'll be quiet through this section so you can hear what it sounds like as you're climbing the hill. So yeah, hopefully you can hear that okay. It's a little windy, but it does get a little louder as you pick up speed. Did slow down a little bit through those hill sections. My guess is it probably slowed down to about 6 or 7 miles per hour. But overall, I think it's going to be a decent result. There's been a couple of these moped-style bikes that have just flown up this hill. I don't think that's going to be the case here, but overall, you can still definitely get up Hellhole on throttle. Okay, so we're back out now doing the pedal test on the Valen. Even though I'm gonna just say off the bat, nobody wants to pedal this thing up a hill. So we'll see how it compares. You know, these moped style bikes, this is always my least favorite hill test to do because they're just not meant to really pedal. It is a single gear, so I can't shift. And what I'm looking for on these is, do I have to pedal much? Or is it basically just saying, if cranks are moving, then give full power? And that's kind of what it feels like here. I'm not ghost pedaling, which I think is okay and good given it's a single gear. But I will say in the flats, you kind of ghost pedal. At the same time though, you're not gonna pedal, so you're gonna throttle. But overall, it actually feels pretty natural. Pedaling wise, I think they've got the gearing down right for going up hills, at least. And we'll see what the results say, but I'll let you listen to the motor. It's about the same when you're pedaling as when you're throttling. So yeah, you can hear it. I will say I think this result's gonna be a little better as I come across the finish line here. We'll go to the tape and see how it did.
On throttle, Justin finished the test in 1 minute and 32 seconds with an average speed of 11.8 miles per hour. His PAS5 test was just a little faster with a time of 1 minute and 27 seconds and a speed of 12.5 miles per hour. Things get a little complicated when we're comparing the Valen Rev 2 with similar bikes we've tested, just because some have had a higher voltage motor and battery, which is a bit of an unfair advantage, and that's what Justin was referencing in his throttle test clip. With those couple of bikes out of the picture, the Valen Rev 2's throttle results lined up perfectly with the average, which shows that it's doing exactly what it needs to do. The pedal results were a little below average, but that makes sense based on the motor's peak wattage and torque. 850 watts and 65 newton meters of torque are both fairly low when looking at similar e-bikes, but that's still clearly enough to get the job done with very little effort from the rider. The Rev 2 gets our approval for completing both tests successfully, plus it has enough power so you're not stuck with one method of climbing hills. You can throttle up if you want, or add a little pedal effort for a little bit more speed. Performance data can definitely be useful in showing you what a bike can do, but how it feels to ride is a totally different thing. Let's go back out on the Valen Rev 2 to discuss ride quality and hopefully give you a sense of what it's like to be on the bike. All right, we are back on the Retrospec Valen Rev 2 to talk about ride quality. So this is a moto or moped style e-bike. So it's not super conducive to pedaling just with that style, but it is very comfortable to ride. It has a nice upright riding position. There's a single frame size for riders from 5 foot up to 6'4". And there's not a lot of adjustability for that, but you do get a nice long saddle so that you can scoot back for better leg extension if you do choose to pedal. But then up front, you do have one adjustment point with the standard style stem and the BMX style riser handlebars. You can loosen up that stem and angle the handlebars to make your reach more comfortable. There's no suspension on the bike, even though it might look like it with the dual crown fork. But I'd say that the tires and the saddle do some work in making the ride more comfortable. You can, ride with lower tire pressure to give yourself a little more cushion, and then the saddle is nice and thick, so that can help to sort of soak up some bumps as well. The tires themselves are 20 by 4 inch. They're made by CST, and they have some off-road tread so that you can, you're not limited to paved surfaces. You can go on dirt and gravel, that sort of thing. And then the motor is a 750 watt rear hub with a cadence sensor that I will demonstrate for you. So we'll bump up to PAS 5 and just sort of coast here for a little bit. And then I'm going to turn the cranks now. So that was like 3 full turns of the cranks for the motor to engage. Definitely a little slow there, but does kick in pretty strong once that does engage. So let's go back to the studio and talk a little bit more, and then we can wrap things up. To clarify a couple of things, I mentioned that there's no suspension on the Rev 2, but the Valen Rev Plus does include a dual crown suspension fork. I can't say I didn't feel the bumps on this version of the bike, but it was a lot more comfortable than I expected for a fully rigid frame. And speaking of the frame, the Valen is available with this frame style as well as a step-through design. We haven't seen both options on many bikes of this style, so big props to Retrospec for going the extra mile there. One thing I'd really like to see improved in the future is the motor engagement. You saw that it took a good few seconds for the motor to kick in when pedaling, and the same was true with the throttle. We didn't have this problem on the higher tier model, but the 2 versions of the bike use different controllers, so we encourage Retrospec to make the Rev 2 more responsive in the future. Otherwise, this bike met all of my expectations for how a moto-style bike should feel. It was comfortable, it felt powerful once the motor engaged, and it just felt cool to ride. So in the big picture, the ride quality was solid, with the understanding that there are a couple of minor trade-offs for the price. E-bikes can be prohibitively expensive for a lot of folks, and I think Retrospec brought that high bar down to a much more accessible level with the Valen Rev 2. So if you're on a budget, you can still get a cool bike without breaking the bank. Sure, there are some compromises with its price tag of around $1,300, but there's a higher end model if you don't mind the additional cost, and overall I think this is a really good bike with solid value. We've only tested a handful of Retrospec's e-bikes up to this point, but good value has been a consistent theme with all of them so far. We'd like to see a couple of improvements on the next version of the bike, both in the speed of motor engagement and the touchiness of the throttle, but neither of those factors really affected the bike's measurable performance. It did a solid job in our testing with great programming, plenty of power, and excellent braking. It also had good handling and a comfortable ride, so in the big picture, there's a lot of bang for the buck. If you'd like to read our written review for this bike or the higher end model, we'll have a link down in the video description that'll take you to electricbikereport.com. And if or when you decide to make a purchase, we'll also leave an affiliate link there to Retrospec's website, which we ask that you use if you found this review helpful. We put a lot of effort into all of our content, and we really appreciate the support. But thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons and ring that bell icon. Let us know what you think down in the comments, and be safe out there. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this is the Retrospec Valen Rev 2.